Zelda Clark also frowned. From what we saw just now, Zeb Lowe has been following Myra Simpson. Could it be that he's become her agent or assistant? She shook her head again. I haven't heard of the company hiring a new agent or assistant. Yvette Smith's face darkened. He must be here because of me. Zelda sighed. It seems like $3 million as hush money wasn't enough. No wonder he didn't accept it. It's not about the money. Yvette shook her head. Zeb just doesn't want to get divorced. He wants to cling to me forever. Then why didn't he just talk to you directly earlier? Zelda asked, puzzled. Yvette thought for a moment. He likes me and can't forget me. He won't do anything to harm me for now, but he wants to possess me forever. Men are like that. Zelda said, if that's really the case, if Zeb realizes he can't win you back, will he go around talking about your relationship? Yvette frowned. I should find a chance to talk to him. Hopefully, he'll understand that there's no future for us. Ding! Storyshots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. At this moment, Zeb, Myra, and another person had arrived at recording hall number 2 of X City TV. Several singers had already done their stage walkthroughs. With no other guests in the recording hall now, Myra had the perfect opportunity to practice on stage. Honor Van went to chat with the show's chief director. While Nettie Collins was busy preparing Myra's performance outfit for the official recording tomorrow, Zeb had nothing to do, so he quietly stood in the corner. Thinking that the person threatening Myra probably wouldn't be able to sneak into X City TV. However, Myra didn't immediately go on stage. Instead, she walked over to Zeb and asked, "Do you know Yvette Smith?" Zeb was startled, not expecting Myra to be so perceptive. She had noticed Yvette staring at him in the elevator earlier. No. Zeb shook his head. They were divorced and had no more ties. He didn't want to have any more entanglements with Yvette. Okay. Myra nodded and didn't ask further, then walked onto the stage. The band teachers beside her had already received the sheet music for the song Myra would be performing. It was one of her hit songs, a classic that Zeb had heard many times. However, Myra's voice clearly hadn't fully recovered. After one run-through with the band, the effect wasn't great. Sorry, everyone. Can we do it again? Myra bowed to the band teachers. On stage, her usually cold demeanor transformed into that of a singer with exacting standards. Being a rising diva in the music scene, everyone was willing to give her face, and they quickly practiced again. This time, it was noticeably better. Since other singers were waiting to practice, Myra couldn't hog the stage and band any longer. After the walkthrough, it was time to head back to the hotel. Miss Simpson, that was amazing. Nettie and Honor had returned and heard Myra's second run-through. Nettie clapped her hands in delight. But Myra didn't look pleased. She shook her head, clearly not satisfied with her performance. Honor comforted her, "Myra, don't overthink it. Your voice hasn't fully recovered yet." Myra was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Ms. Van, can we find a new song?" Honor asked, "You want to sing a new song?" Myra nodded, "I don't want to rehash old songs. It doesn't feel right." Zeb nodded from the side. No wonder Myra became a diva in the music industry in just 3 years. At least she still holds herself to high standards when it comes to singing. Nowadays, many well-known singers participate in singing programs and, to play it safe, they either cover their own old songs or others' old hits, losing their drive and relying on past successes. Pure singers like Myra are becoming rarer. However, judging by her performance in that song just now, Myra's condition indeed wasn't great. If she remains in this state during the official recording tomorrow, her ranking might not be good. But Zeb was just an assistant and bodyguard, he couldn't say much. The four of them left X City TV and went to the booked hotel. To conveniently protect Myra, Zeb's room was right next to hers. As soon as Zeb entered his room, his phone rang. It was Yvette Smith calling. "Zeb, where are you? I need to talk to you." "Yvette? I'm working. If you have something to say, just say it over the phone." "Zeb, what kind of work are you doing?" Yvette suddenly asked. Zeb replied, "You saw it, I'm Myra Simpson's assistant." Yvette's voice suddenly grew louder. "Zeb, we have cherished memories together, and I really hope we can part on good terms. I want to have a proper talk with you." Zeb said in surprise, "Didn't we agree? We'll go through the divorce procedures in a month. What's there to talk about?" Yvette paused, her voice becoming softer. Zeb, I know Myra is staying at the Hilton Hotel. There's a cafe on the first floor. I'm waiting for you in the cafe. With that, she hung up. Zeb felt a bit puzzled, not knowing what else Yvette wanted to say. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. He went to open it and saw Nettie. The round-faced girl walked in with a cheerful smile. Mr. Lowe, Ms. Van just asked Myra, and she said you're doing a great job. That's rare, I thought Myra wouldn't want a man living in her house. Zeb thought to himself. If you knew I saw your Myra completely naked and even pinned her down last night, you probably wouldn't say that. He smiled, Ms. Collins, just call me Zeb. Nettie chuckled, I'll call you Zeb, and you can call me Nettie. Zeb also smiled, alright, Nettie, I saw people online bad-mouthing Ms. Simpson. Do you know what's going on? At the mention of this, Nettie's round face turned red with anger. It's those hired trolls spreading rumors. Myra hasn't even dated anyone, how could she be a mistress? Those bastards are too much. Zeb nodded. He had already noticed last night that Myra was at best socially awkward, and at worst might have a mild social anxiety disorder. A girl like her, who clearly rarely interacts with men, being accused of using backdoor deals or being a mistress was indeed far-fetched. Zeb noticed the implication in Nettie's words and frowned slightly. Competitors? Hiring trolls to slander rivals is common in the entertainment industry. Myra is so popular, who knows how many people's paths she's blocked. If they can't attack her looks or professional skills, they can only target her personal life. Nettie looked around cautiously and whispered. I heard from Ms. Van that the artist who hired trolls to slander Myra might be from SkyCloud Entertainment. SkyCloud Entertainment? Isn't that the same company? Do you know who it is? Zeb was stunned, thinking this was really dark, even insiders would go to such lengths. Nettie, looking like she was afraid someone would hear, leaned close to Zeb's ear and whispered, it might be Yvette. A street away from the Hilton Hotel where Zeb was, in another 5-star hotel. Zelda asked Yvette, who had just put down her phone, he doesn't want to meet and talk? Yvette smiled, how could he not want to see me? He's just pretending to be indifferent to catch my attention. I know him too well. With that, she put on her hat, sunglasses, and mask, ready to go to the meeting. This time, she must have a good talk with Zeb, to completely dispel his unrealistic fantasies. Make him willingly divorce, and promise not to pester her anymore. Zelda said, I'll go with you. Yvette nodded. The two left the hotel together and went to the cafe on the first floor of the Hilton Hotel. They didn't sit together, Zelda sat at another table. Yvette waited for a while, but Zeb didn't show up. She couldn't help feeling a bit anxious. Could she have guessed wrong? Did Zeb not become Myra's assistant to get close to her? Just as she was thinking wildly, she saw a familiar figure walk into the cafe. Yvette's eyes lit up, she sat more elegantly, and felt more confident. My charm is indeed irresistible to any man, even Zeb, who has been with me for 3 years. Too much charm can also bring a lot of trouble. This is the plight of being a beautiful and excellent woman. Yvette, filled with pride and annoyance, waved gently at Zeb. Zeb walked over and sat down. Yvette, wearing sunglasses, sighed and said, Zeb, why are you doing this? Zeb was puzzled. What do you mean? Yvette spoke earnestly. I know you haven't moved on yet, but it's over between us. You need to face reality. We're not suitable for each other. Maybe there's a better woman waiting for you in the future. Zeb was stunned. Did you ask me out just to say this? Yvette said, I really can't bear to see you so obsessed. Zeb, let go. It's better for both of us. As she spoke, she took out a bank card and pushed it in front of Zeb. There's 5 million in here. The password is your birthday. Zeb looked at her, somewhat puzzled. Yvette continued, Zeb, we had a wonderful past. Even though we're apart, we can still be friends, right? As a friend, I hope you can live well. This 5 million is enough for you to marry and have children and live better than an ordinary person. Consider it my compensation to you. Zeb looked down at the bank card on the table and finally understood. He smiled helplessly. Are you afraid I'll tell others about us? Yvette took off her sunglasses, her eyes sincere. I truly hope you can live better. Your personality isn't suited for the entertainment industry. But being an ordinary person without so much pressure can also be a kind of happiness. Zeb was silent for a moment, then suddenly sighed. It seems you really don't understand me. He pushed the bank card back and calmly said, being Myra's assistant was just a coincidence. I didn't know you would come to X City TV to record a show. Yvette, is there a possibility? Zeb continued, maybe you're just overthinking it? Yvette was stunned, staring closely at Zeb's face as if trying to determine if he was lying. Zeb didn't dwell on the topic and suddenly asked, Myra has been slandered recently. Do you know who's behind it? Yvette was taken aback, her eyes flickering. Why are you asking? Zeb waved his hand. Just curious. I remember Zelda seems to know a lot of internet trolls. Yvette frowned, looking Zeb up and down. You didn't come out just to ask this, did you? Zeb suddenly laughed, stood up. I know the answer now. That's it. Goodbye. He then walked out of the cafe without any hesitation. Yvette watched his back, her eyes confused. Zelda sat down, her face looking a bit unpleasant. How did Zeb know we hired trolls to slander Myra Simpson? Yvette shook her head, still looking at the cafe door from a distance, the figure already far away. Could it be that I really don't understand him? Just as Yvette guessed, Zeb had no other purpose in meeting her. Purely wanting to ask if she had hired trolls to slander Myra. Without needing Yvette to answer, from her expression, Zeb could tell that the mastermind was indeed her and Zelda. Zeb thought of Myra practicing singing alone on the second floor last night. She seemed to be a very hard-working singer, but her current state didn't seem great. So, it's my ex-wife hiring trolls to slander my current boss? Zeb shook his head. This is too crazy. The reason he wanted to confirm if it was Yvette's doing was to see if she had really become so unscrupulous for fame. It seems the entertainment industry is indeed a big diva. Anyone who goes in gets tainted. Zeb thought of the cool and aloof Myra. She seems to be an exception? The elevator arrived at the floor where Zeb, Myra, and the others were. As soon as Zeb walked out, he saw a man in a black hoodie, his face hidden, sneaking around Myra's room door. Could it be the guy who sent photos to Myra? Zeb quickly walked over. The man, hearing footsteps, turned around. Seeing Zeb approaching aggressively, he was startled and turned to run towards the stairwell. Zeb shouted, Hey, wait a minute. The man paused, then immediately started running. It was indeed that guy. Zeb hurried to chase after him, but they were already some distance apart. By the time Zeb reached the stairwell, the guy had already disappeared. A few minutes later, in Honor's room, Honor and Nettie listened to Zeb's account. Honor's face changed, and Nettie said, Ms. Van, should we call the police? Honor smiled bitterly and shook her head. We already called the police last time and they couldn't find anything. According to Mr. Lowe, the man just now had his face covered. Even if we check the surveillance, it might be hard to find him, and Myra has to record a show tomorrow. I'm worried it will affect her state. Zeb nodded. That's why I didn't tell Ms. Simpson. Nettie worriedly said, but what if that guy comes to harass Myra tonight? Honor pondered for a moment, looking at Zeb, seemingly hesitating. Finally, she said, Mr. Lowe, could you accompany Myra tonight? Zeb was taken aback. What did she mean? Our personal assistants don't sell themselves, okay. Honor also realized her words were a bit ambiguous and quickly explained. I mean, please stay in Myra's room tonight to protect her in case anything happens. Nettie nodded repeatedly. That's a good idea. Anyway, Zeb is Myra's personal bodyguard. Zeb looked at the two of them, feeling a bit speechless. Last night at Myra's house, he and Myra stayed on different floors, so there wasn't any problem. But now they were in a hotel, and the rooms were so small. How could they expect him to spend the night alone with Myra in one room? Were they out of their minds? Honor seemed to understand what he was thinking and said confidently, Mr. Lowe, I trust your character. Myra never interacts with men, but she is willing to let you stay at her house. This shows that you are a very gentlemanly man. A gentleman? Was she mocking him? Zeb was at a loss for words and had to say, Miss Simpson agreed to let me stay at her house. But that doesn't mean she agrees to share a room with me, right? Honor stood up. I'll go talk to her right away. Just wait a moment. Moments later, Honor returned, smiling at Zeb. Myra agreed. It seems she really trusts you. Zeb grew more puzzled. They had only known each other for a day, and she trusted him so easily? There was no way around it. Since the boss had given the order, he had to comply. As long as he was careful to protect himself, there shouldn't be any problems. After dinner, around 7 o'clock, under the urging of Honor and Nettie, Zeb took his quilt and pillow to Myra's door and knocked. Who is it? A cold voice came from inside, sounding somewhat weak. Zeb replied, Ms. Simpson, it's me. The door opened halfway, revealing a slightly pale but stunningly beautiful face. Seeing Zeb holding a quilt and pillow, Myra was slightly taken aback. Her cheeks seemed to blush a little, but she still opened the door and stepped aside to let Zeb in. Zeb entered Myra's room and looked around. It was slightly larger than his own, resembling a living room with a sofa and a TV. The only bed in the room was a bit away from the sofa. And there was a curtain that could be drawn to separate the bed, effectively creating a small bedroom. Seeing the layout of Myra's room, Zeb breathed a sigh of relief. At least it wasn't like a standard room where the beds were close together, which would have been too awkward. However, it looked like he would have to sleep on the sofa tonight. He placed the quilt and pillow on the sofa and turned to Myra. Ms. Simpson, you don't need to worry about me. You should rest. As soon as he said that, he realized he had said something silly. Myra was still wearing her daytime sportswear and jeans, clearly not having showered yet. How could she rest like this? Myra looked at him with her clear eyes, seeming a bit uneasy. She clutched the hem of her clothes and said softly, I still need to shower. Oh, okay, then go ahead. Zeb replied, feeling that his words sounded off. It was like a couple getting a room, with the guy letting the girl shower first, and then. Myra's thoughts were evidently not as complicated. She nodded, grabbed her pajamas, and headed to the bathroom. After a couple of steps, she turned back to Zeb and said, Mr. Lowe, thank you. Zeb was puzzled. Thank me for what? Myra lightly bit her lip. Thank you for not telling Ms. Van and Nettie about what happened last night. With that, she turned and walked into the bathroom, leaving Zeb slightly stunned. Myra entered the bathroom, closed the door, locked it, and checked several times to ensure it was locked. Then she turned off the lights, relying on the corridor light outside. The bathroom in this hotel was made of thick glass. Although it wasn't transparent, if the bathroom light was too bright, you could see blurry shadows from outside. Myra placed her pajamas to the side and was about to undress for a shower when there were 2 knocks on the bathroom door. She tensed up and asked coldly, What is it? Zeb said from outside, Ms. Simpson, your body hasn't fully recovered. Don't soak in the bathtub for now to avoid any accidents. Myra was taken aback, recalling the scene from last night when he saw her in the bathtub. Her face turned red, and she bit her lip, her voice colder and tinged with embarrassment. Got it. Standing at the bathroom door, Zeb also sensed Myra's mood. He shook his head with a smile and went to sit on the sofa. He meant well. From Myra's complexion, he could tell she was still weak. In such a physical state, soaking in a bathtub could easily cause her to faint. At this moment, the sound of water came from the bathroom, likely from the shower hitting the floor. In the quiet room, the water sound seemed somewhat abrupt, making one want to peek into the bathroom. Zeb wasn't the type to sneak a peek at someone bathing. Besides, even if he wanted to, he could only see a very blurry outline, which wasn't interesting at all. He simply took out his phone, logged into Amateur Station, and checked the stats for, unfortunately, it's not you. As soon as he logged in, he saw the message icon in the upper right corner showing a red 999 plus. Whoa, how many messages are there? Could it be that this song has gone viral on Amateur Station? Zeb clicked into his personal center and saw a long list of likes, rewards, and comments notifications. He scrolled down for a long time and still didn't reach the end. Most of the comments praised the song for being pleasant to listen to and criticized him for singing it too healing. There were also dozens of in-app notifications. Congratulations, your work original healing song, perfect for those who've just experienced heartbreak, has been featured on the app's homepage. This was received this morning, but he hadn't seen it because he was on the plane. There were more. Your work has reached 100,000 views, congratulations. You have received 10,000 points in amateur coins as rewards. There were many reward notifications, over 100, including several for 10,000 points. $1 equals 100 amateur coins, so 10,000 points are $100. The author and the website split it 50-50, so he could get $50. At this moment, Zeb checked the stats for, unfortunately, it's not you. The rewards had already reached hundreds of thousands of amateur coins, which meant that just from rewards and platform shares, he had already earned over $2,000 today. More importantly, the views had exceeded 100,000. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before it reached 1 million views. Reaching 1 million views means that this video has at least become popular on Amateur Station. There were over 20,000 likes, several thousand favorites. And his follower count had reached over 30,000, making him somewhat famous in the music section. And this achievement was reached within just one day. Apart from a few amateur greats, very few works in the music section had such rapid data growth. However, Zeb remained calm. Using golden hits from Earth to dominate the amateur circle was nothing to get excited about. He was still far from his goal of becoming a breakout star. The time was too short, he needed to wait and see. At this moment, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped. A few minutes later, the bathroom door opened, and Myra walked out. She was wearing long-sleeved pajamas that covered her from head to toe. While drying her hair with a towel, she said to Zeb, "I'm done." "You can go now." Zeb replied, "No need. I've already showered in my room." Myra was stunned for a moment, then said "oh," and went back into the bathroom to blow-dry her hair. Zeb had a strange expression. Their conversation just now sounded too much like a couple in a hotel room, yet Myra seemed completely unaware. She really didn't understand anything about relationships between men and women. It was unexpected to find such a pure girl in the entertainment industry. Unfortunately, such girls would eventually be tainted, just like Yvette once was. Zeb shook his head and continued to look at his phone. Myra quickly blow-dried her hair and came out. Her long hair, which was tied in a ponytail during the day, now hung smoothly down to her waist. Below that were her long, captivating legs. However, her pajamas had a cartoon character with big eyes, which contrasted sharply with her cold demeanor, making her seem a bit cute. Seeing Zeb looking at her, Myra instinctively pulled her clothes down, lowered her head, and walked to the bed, saying softly, "I'm going to rest now." Zeb replied, "Okay, I'll rest too." Myra immediately pulled the curtain, crawled into the bed like a little rabbit, and wrapped herself tightly in the blanket. Zeb smiled, turned off the lights, and lay down on the sofa. The room fell into darkness and silence, with only the occasional sound of cars passing by outside the window. Zeb's phone vibrated. He picked it up to see a private message from someone on amateur station, once again from the user named Lonely Plum. In the original score of this song, were there originally piano and flute parts? Zeb chuckled. Although Lonely Plum was a fake girl, he had good musical sense, being able to tell the original instruments from his guitar playing. He replied, "Yes, how did you figure it out?" Music enthusiasts could chat about music, regardless of gender. Lonely Plum, I tried humming it on the plane during the day and felt that the original score couldn't be that simple. Snowboat, you could figure out there were piano and flute parts just by humming? You're quite skilled. Lonely Plum, I often sing on stage. Snowboat, are you a singer? Lonely Plum, yes. Zeb clicked on Lonely Plum's profile and saw that she hadn't posted any works. He asked, "Why haven't you posted any singing videos on amateur station?" At this moment, in the bed separated by a curtain, Myra, who was secretly looking at her phone, saw Snowboat's question. Her slender fingers tapped a few times, replying, "It's not convenient." Her singing would be immediately recognized once it was sent out. The other side quickly responded, "Why is it inconvenient? Are you a professional singer?" Myra's lips curled slightly. This person guessed quite accurately. She typed back, "Yes, I'm afraid of being recognized." The response came quickly, "You're kidding yourself, huh? You might as well say you're a big star." "Not joking anymore, bro, good night." Myra blinked, feeling a bit frustrated as she looked at the message from the other person. "Calling me bro? What does that mean?" Myra sent a question mark back, but the other side seemed to have really gone to sleep and didn't respond. Myra pursed her lips, took out her earphones, plugged them into her phone, and put them in her ears. She pulled up the saved video of Snowboat's performance of "Unfortunately, It's Not You" and clicked play. In the quiet room, the gentle melody and singing flowed into her ears. The cold and beautiful girl hugged her arms, curled up in the blanket, and slowly closed her eyes. The next day, morning. Knock, knock, knock. Zeb and Myra were awakened by a knock on the door. They each sat up from the bed and the sofa. Zeb walked over to open the door, and Nettie and Honor walked in. Nettie, seeing Myra on the bed behind the curtain, looking like she had just woken up, couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Myra, it's been a long time since you slept this well." Myra was startled, picked up her phone to check the time, and realized it was already past 9 in the morning. Recently, due to illness and online rumors, she had been suffering from insomnia, unable to sleep at night and waking up at 5 or 6 in the morning. Usually, she would get up before 6 to practice singing. Nettie and Honor had always been worried that her body couldn't take it if this continued. Nettie often said it would be great if Myra could sleep until the sun came up. Unexpectedly, today Myra had really slept until 9, and it was even in the same room as a man. By this time, Myra had gotten out of bed, quickly tied up her long hair, pulled open the curtain, and said to Nettie, "Why didn't you call me earlier?" Honor said, "We thought you were already awake, so we didn't come to call you." "We didn't expect." She glanced at Zeb and suddenly smiled. "It seems like having Mr. Lowe as your assistant is the right choice." Nettie giggled and said, "Yeah, with Zeb around, you can finally get some good sleep." Myra looked at Zeb but said nothing, walking straight into the bathroom. Zeb quickly explained to the two, "I slept on the sofa last night, I didn't do anything." Honor laughed, "Mr. Lowe, you misunderstood. We just find it strange. Myra has been having insomnia lately, unable to sleep at night, and last night she suddenly slept so well." Zeb said curiously, "Miss Simpson has insomnia?" "No way, I saw her sleeping soundly last night." Nettie exclaimed, "Zeb, how do you know Myra was sleeping soundly?" Zeb quickly explained, "I was worried that guy would come, so I got up to check a few times and happened to see Miss Simpson. She was sleeping very well, not like someone with insomnia." At this time, Myra, who was pretending to wash her face in the bathroom, stiffened. "He watched me sleep last night? This guy." Myra felt a bit annoyed. But then she thought, he is an assistant and bodyguard. Staying alert at night shows professionalism, and he didn't do anything to her. It was her own deep sleep, no one else to blame. Thinking this way, Myra felt even more frustrated. She quickly finished washing up and walked out with a cold face. "I need to change clothes." "Oh, I'll go out first then." Zeb quickly grabbed his blanket and pillow and left the room. After he left, Myra started changing clothes. Nettie giggled and said, "Who knew Zeb could also act as a sleeping pill?" Myra was putting on a dress. Hearing Nettie's words, she paused and coldly said, "I'll sleep alone tonight." Honor frowned, "Did Zeb do something last night?" Myra shook her head, "I just don't like having others in the room." "But what if someone comes to harass you?" Honor was a bit worried. Myra pursed her lips and said, "Let Nettie stay with me." Nettie quickly said, "Myra, we're both girls. If something really happens, I might not be able to protect you." Myra glanced at her, "If something happens, I'll protect you." After saying that, she quickly finished putting on her dress and walked out of the room. Nettie asked curiously, "Ms. Van, what's wrong with Myra?" Honor shook her head and followed her out. "Let's go, first to X City TV station, let Myra and the band practice a few more times." Today was the first recording of I Am a Singer, very important for Myra's comeback after a short illness. Especially with so many people online criticizing her, saying she was done for. At this time, she needed to use her singing to prove herself and fight back. The four quickly arrived at X City TV station. Myra first went to the dressing room. She had brought performance clothes and needed to change, and there was a special makeup artist to do her makeup. Nettie and Honor accompanied Zeb, but since Zeb was a man, it wasn't convenient for him to go in. So he waited outside the dressing room. This was a corridor with multiple dressing rooms for the singers to use. Zeb saw several well-known singers, including two veterans from the previous era, who were of diva and king status. It was clear that this season of I Am a Singer had invested heavily, making it even more challenging for Myra to achieve a good result. While Zeb was thinking about this, he saw Yvette approaching. Besides Zelda, she was accompanied by 3 assistants, which was an even grander entourage than Myra's. Yvette also saw Zeb and was slightly taken aback but didn't say anything. She walked past Zeb with her sunglasses on, as if they were strangers. In her mind, she thought, he's actually waiting here for me? So, he was just pretending to be indifferent yesterday. After entering a dressing room and sending the assistants out, Zelda frowned and said, "Why do we keep running into Zeb?" Yvette shook her head and smiled, "He just wants to attract my attention. He's still as immature as ever." Zelda replied, "Forget it, as long as he doesn't say anything reckless." "Yvette, don't let him affect you. I heard yesterday that Myra's voice still isn't in great shape. You have a good chance to beat her today." Among the 7 guests this season, there were 4 men and 3 women. Besides Myra and Yvette, there was also a former diva who, although older and semi-retired, still had her status. The show would definitely ensure she stayed until the finals. Myra and Yvette were similar in age and had somewhat similar singing styles. One of them was bound to be eliminated in the first 2 episodes. If Yvette could beat Myra and stay, her popularity and status would naturally receive a significant boost. The first episode's performance was crucial. Yvette's goal was clear, it didn't matter what place she got, as long as she beat Myra. Hearing Zelda's words, a gleam flashed in Yvette's eyes, and she nodded heavily. I'm confident. I will definitely win this time. In her 3 years since debuting, she had always been overshadowed by Myra. The good resources in the company were always picked over by Myra before reaching her. Myra had risen to fame, becoming a diva and basking in adoration, while Yvette struggled to climb up, remaining in the second tier. What infuriated her most was that Myra always had that aloof goddess demeanor. So proud and never looking at her directly. As if she wasn't even worthy of being her competitor. Just because she's a bit prettier and has longer legs? I'm not bad either. Why am I always not as good as you? This time, I'll prove to the company that I'm no less than Myra. Zeb stood in the busy corridor filled with the entourage of the 7 singers, with staff from the show hurrying around calling people. I Am a Singer had not only the onstage competition but also many interview segments that needed to be recorded in advance. Watching the bustling scene around him, Zeb found it familiar. Over the years, assisting Yvette, he had seen many such scenes. However, this was the first time Zeb had come to a top-tier show like I Am a Singer. Has Ms. Simpson arrived? A young girl ran over hurriedly, her round face flushed from running. Zeb quickly responded, she's here, getting her makeup done inside. The girl ran up to Zeb. Ms. Simpson needs to record a pre-interview. Please ask her to go to Hall 3. Zeb nodded, walked to the door of Myra's dressing room, and knocked, saying, Ms. Simpson, the show needs you to go to Hall 3 immediately. Wait a moment. Nettie's slightly panicked voice came from inside. The door opened a crack, revealing Nettie's round face. Seeing Zeb and the young girl beside him, Nettie apologetically said to the girl, I'm sorry, Ms. Simpson isn't feeling well. Can you wait a bit? The young girl nodded. I'll inform the director and have other guests do the pre-interviews first. Please ask Ms. Simpson to hurry. She hurried off, and Zeb asked Nettie, what's going on? Nettie poked her head out, looked around, and then pulled Zeb into the dressing room. Hey! The chubby girl had quite a bit of strength, catching Zeb off guard and pulling him in quickly. Inside the dressing room, only Nettie and Honor were present. The makeup artist had already left. Zeb saw Myra sitting in a chair, her body slightly hunched, her eyebrows furrowed, and fine beads of sweat on her forehead. What's wrong? Zeb asked quickly. Ms. Simpson's old ailment has flared up. Nettie said, hastily finding a box of medicine in her bag, pouring hot water, and handing the cup and 2 pills to Myra. But Myra shook her head. Though her face was pale from pain, she refused to take the medicine. Honor stomped her foot anxiously beside her. Myra, the doctor said you must take your medicine. If you can't, let's skip the recording today and go to the hospital first. Myra's face was pale, and her slender hand pressed against her abdomen as she spoke weakly, No, I won't go. Nettie looked at her with tears in her eyes, feeling heartbroken. Myra, you're not taking your medicine or going to the hospital. Your body can't take this. Zeb watched the scene in confusion and asked Honor in a low voice, Ms. Van, what's going on? What's wrong with Ms. Simpson? Honor sighed, pulled him aside, and whispered. Myra has had a chronic stomach condition for a long time. When it flares up, it's very painful. No way, with a stomach condition, she didn't eat properly last night? That's really something. Zeb couldn't help but glance at Myra and then asked, why doesn't Ms. Simpson take her medicine? Honor looked back at the curled-up Myra and lowered her voice even more. Myra had some experiences as a child that made her fearful of hospitals and medications. Zeb nodded, understanding. Some people develop fears of certain things due to accidents or incidents, like the saying, once bitten by a snake, 10 years afraid of a well rope. In psychological terms, this condition is called post-traumatic stress disorder, commonly known as PTSD. It seemed Myra had likely experienced some trauma in the hospital as a child, which made her strongly resist and fear hospitals and medications. Zeb thought for a moment and asked Honor, is Ms. Simpson's stomach condition serious? Honor replied, we've had a doctor come to the house to check on Myra. The doctor said her condition isn't very serious right now. It's just very painful when it flares up. She could actually take medication to relieve the pain, but Myra. Zeb thought for a moment and then said to Honor, I have a method that can quickly relieve Ms. Simpson's pain, but she needs to agree and cooperate. What method? Nettie hurried over and asked anxiously. Honor also said, Mr. Lowe, please tell us. Zeb looked at the two of them, hesitated for a moment, and finally said, I learned some first aid and nursing knowledge in college. I also learned how to quickly relieve common stomach pains, but... Oh, come on, Zeb, just say it. Nettie urged. Zeb said, it involves massaging the patient's stomach and using a hot compress, which should quickly relieve the pain. But if it doesn't work, we'll need to go to the hospital immediately. Massage? Honor and Nettie exchanged glances and then looked at Myra together. They both knew that Myra rarely even spoke to men, let alone allowed a man to touch her body. Moreover, the stomach area is between the chest and lower abdomen, a sensitive area for women. Having a man massage there. Nettie thought, how could Myra possibly agree? She suggested to Honor. Ms. Van, maybe we should talk to the director and postpone Myra's part today? Honor shook her head with a bitter smile. How is that possible? I'm a Singer is a competition among 7 singers. Although they perform one by one, many shots require all 7 singers to appear together. How can the other 6 record first and Myra later? Even if the director agreed, if word got out, wouldn't that just provide more material for people to criticize Myra? They'd say she was acting like a diva, demanding special treatment for recording. It would be impossible to explain. Can it really quickly relieve the pain? At this moment, a weak voice sounded. Nettie and Honor looked at Myra in astonishment. Her delicate face was covered in sweat, her complexion pale, and her cold eyes were looking at Zeb. Zeb nodded. I have a friend who also suffers from stomach pain. I always help her relieve it this way. Many girls develop mild stomach conditions due to dieting. Yvette used to have frequent stomach pains, and Zeb always helped her relieve them quickly with massages. Myra looked at Zeb and, after a moment, weakly said, okay. Myra? Honor and Nettie were both shocked, not expecting her to agree to such intimate contact with a man. Zeb nodded and walked over to Myra. Nettie quickly brought a chair for Zeb to sit on. Miss Simpson, please move your hand away. Zeb sat down and, seeing Myra's hand covering her stomach, spoke softly. Myra hesitated but finally moved her hand away. Zeb said to Nettie, could you please find a hot water bottle and warm it up a bit? Okay. Nettie responded and quickly went out the door. Zeb looked at Myra, who was biting her lip, and said, Ms. Simpson, I'm going to start. Please cooperate and try not to move. Myra weakly nodded. Zeb extended his hand and gently pressed on the area just above Myra's lower abdomen and below her chest, which was the stomach area. When Zeb's hand touched Myra, both of their bodies stiffened slightly. Ordinary Road Earth Memory Replication in Progress, Replication Progress 100%, Replication Complete. Encounter Earth Memory Replication in Progress, Replication Progress 90%. Lonely Hero Earth Memory Replication in Progress, Replication Progress 40%. Collection of Tang and Song Poetry Earth Memory Replication in Progress, Replication Progress 60%. When Zeb's hand touched Myra's body, the replication progress of Earth's memories appeared before his eyes again. Among them, Ordinary Road was instantly replicated successfully. The lyrics, composition, arrangement, instrument playing, and singing details of this song were all imprinted in his mind without any omission. At the same time, Encounter reached 90%, Lonely Hero increased by 5% to 40%. And the collection of Tang and Song poetry that appeared when he fell on Myra the night before reached 60%. Zeb was momentarily stunned. So, this golden finger really was a rogue, wasn't it? Listening to girls sing usually made the progress slow, but as soon as he touched a girl's body, it skyrocketed. This was too much. Zeb was a bit speechless and amused. How did he end up with such a golden finger? Myra's feelings were even more complicated at this moment. When Zeb's palm pressed against her lower abdomen, her whole body stiffened, and she almost couldn't help but push him away. She had grown up without ever being touched so intimately by a man. And in such a sensitive and private place. Myra could even feel his index finger pressing against the edge of her inner clothing. If he moved up a little more. Myra clenched her hand tightly, her nails almost digging into her flesh. But she quickly remembered that the night before at home, when she fainted in the bathtub, this man had likely already touched even more private places. She was unconscious at the time and didn't feel it. Thinking of this, although it was very shameful, the current contact seemed less unbearable. As Myra was thinking, she saw that this guy's hand was still on her lower abdomen without moving. Seeing his dazed expression, it seemed like he was sensing something. A burst of shame and annoyance rose in her heart. She gritted her teeth and said, You press. Myra's voice brought Zeb back to his senses. He was actually thinking about the Earth memory replication just now, without any dirty thoughts. Hearing Myra's embarrassed and annoyed voice, he realized that his hand was still on her. Sorry. Zeb apologized and began to press down hard with his palm, rubbing up and down, left and right. People with stomach pain actually have this experience. Pressing hard on the stomach can relieve the pain a bit. But this was just the simplest method. Zeb had learned about this kind of care and had practiced it on his ex-wife, Yvette. He knew that besides pressing hard, it was also necessary to rub in a clockwise direction and finally apply heat. This way, the stomach pain could be quickly relieved. However, Zeb's sudden action caught Myra off guard, and she instinctively let out a sound. At this time, Nettie had returned with a hot water bottle. Just as she closed the door, she heard Myra's voice. The little assistant almost dropped the hot water bottle in her hand. She looked in astonishment at Myra, who was having her lower abdomen massaged by Zeb. And her mind was still echoing with Myra's voice that could melt into one's bones. Her cheeks inexplicably reddened. Nettie whispered to Honor, Ms. Van, is Myra feeling comfortable or in pain? Honor glared at her, what are you thinking? Don't talk nonsense. Oh. Nettie stuck out her tongue and didn't dare to speak anymore. Myra's cheeks were flushed at this moment. She also realized that her voice just now was a bit too much. She could only lower her head, using her long hair to cover her face, like an ostrich hiding its head in the sand. As long as no one saw her face, she wouldn't be embarrassed. Zeb was also startled by Myra's voice, but he didn't think much about it. Guessing that she was not used to being touched by someone. He focused on massaging, feeling that one hand was not enough, so he used both hands. Myra quickly raised her hand to cover her mouth. She almost let out another sound. Because the spot he was pressing felt tingly and numb, her stomach didn't hurt as much, and she felt very comfortable. Originally, she thought she couldn't stand being touched by a man, but unexpectedly, not only did it not feel disgusting, it was actually quite comfortable. Moreover, Zeb was very experienced. When massaging and rubbing, he intentionally avoided some sensitive areas, focusing only on the stomach without any impropriety. As he continued, Myra's body gradually relaxed, and she stopped sweating on her forehead. After a few minutes, Zeb let go and asked, Ms. Simpson, do you feel better? Myra's cold eyes were still a bit hazy. Hearing Zeb's words, she blinked and said in surprise, much better. Effective. Nettie and Honor also breathed a sigh of relief. Zeb stood up and said to Nettie, use the hot water bottle to apply heat to Ms. Simpson's stomach. Nettie agreed quickly and went over to place the hot water bottle on Myra's stomach. Myra looked up at Zeb, thank you. Zeb, however, didn't appreciate it and started to criticize her. Ms. Simpson, I must remind you that your current lifestyle and eating habits are very bad. This greatly affects your health and can even impact your breath control, causing your singing skills to decline. Ms. Simpson, you are a singer. Out of responsibility to your fans, I believe you should improve your lifestyle and eating habits. You can't continue to be so reckless. Your body is yours, but your voice belongs to your fans. If you keep neglecting your health like this, you're being unfair to both yourself and your fans. So, I suggest you create a scientific schedule and diet plan, and have someone strictly supervise you to ensure you follow it. This is the responsible approach for both yourself and your fans. Zeb wasn't saying this on a whim. Through his interactions with Myra over the past few days, he had noticed this flaw in her. Although she wasn't as unscrupulous as other female stars in the entertainment industry and was quite simple and diligent in her singing practice, she had her own issues, namely being capricious and not taking care of her health. You're a singer, a public figure. You have an obligation to present your best self to your fans, not always appear sickly in front of them. That only brings negative energy to those who like you. This is not what a public figure should do. When Zeb was Yvette's assistant, he often told her the same thing, which gradually led to a clash of views and them drifting apart. However, Myra's situation was different from Yvette's. Myra had better looks and singing skills than Yvette, and her popularity and status were higher. She should cherish her body even more. She clearly had a stomach problem. Yet she didn't eat properly the night before last and sneaked out for a late-night snack. This was an irregular lifestyle and diet. Zeb couldn't stand it. With such good conditions, why mistreat herself like this? At this moment, he finally couldn't hold back and said these words. Suddenly, the dressing room fell silent. Nettie opened her mouth wide, staring blankly at Zeb. Honor also looked at him in surprise, her eyes wide open. And Myra. Nettie had been with Myra since she joined SkyCloud Entertainment, spending over 3 years together day and night. She knew Myra very well. Although Myra seemed cold, she was actually a very simple and hard-working ordinary girl. But Myra's personality was a bit stubborn. Nettie had never seen anyone educate her like this. And it was a male assistant who had only been on the job for less than 2 days. Nettie covered her mouth, worried that Myra would get angry and argue with Zeb. Or directly fire Zeb. At this moment, Myra looked up at Zeb, and the atmosphere in the dressing room became tense. Honor opened her mouth as if to say something, but then there was a knock on the door. "Ms. Simpson, it's time for your interview prep." It was Assistant Lloyd. Myra didn't say anything more, turned, and walked towards the door. Nettie quickly opened the door and followed her out. "Sorry, we were delayed by something just now." Nettie apologized to Assistant Lloyd. Myra also slightly bowed to the young girl to express her apology. It's okay. Now is just the right time." Assistant Lloyd quickly waved her hand, and the three of them walked towards the interview prep room. Honor looked at Zeb with a complicated expression. "Mr. Lowe, you can rest here for a bit." She also had to oversee the recording, paused at the door, and then turned back to Zeb. "Myra is not an irresponsible person, but what you said makes sense." After saying that, she hurriedly left. Zeb was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and smiled wryly. Was he really arguing with his boss on his second day at work? His words were entirely for her own good. If Myra didn't accept them, was unhappy with him, or fired him, it would only show that she was just like other stars, only in it for vanity and money, not a true singer. At worst, he could just rent another place. He'd wait until today's recording was over to see. Zeb felt no burden in his heart, picked up his phone, and logged into Amateur Station. As soon as he entered, he saw his notification showing a red $9.99+. He clicked in and saw various likes, rewards, and comments. Scrolling down the homepage, he finally saw his video in the middle lower section. The view count was already 360,000. Clicking into the video, there were over 40,000 likes and nearly 10,000 favorites, reaching the standard for a minor hit. Looking at Snowboat's follower count, it was at 60,000. On Amateur Station, having 100,000 followers made you a somewhat famous video creator. With the next milestones being 500,000 and 1 million. Currently, Amateur Station had over 100 creators with over 1 million followers, known as amateur gods. A few of them even had over 2 million followers, the top-tier figures. And Zeb's goal was to break through this ceiling, ultimately crossing over to establish his own studio as a lyricist and singer-songwriter, entering the entertainment industry. Zeb looked at the comments below the video. There were already over 2,000, most of which were amazed and impressed by "Unfortunately, It's Not You." Many people were also asking Zeb, is this song really an original by the video creator? The main reason for the skepticism was that the quality of "Unfortunately, It's Not You" was so high. It clearly surpassed the works of the top creators in the music section of Amateur Station. This made many people doubt whether the song was truly an original by Snowboat. Some people left sarcastic comments in the comments section. If someone could compose a song of this level, they would have signed with a management company long ago. Still hanging around the amateur circle? Must be plagiarism. Video creator, say something. Is it really your original work? Why do I feel like I've heard a similar melody somewhere before? Could it be that they took bits and pieces from here and there and stitched them together? People these days will do anything for fame. Zeb looked at the information of these accounts and found they all had one thing in common. They were all newly registered accounts. This was interesting. As a regular visitor to Amateur Station, Zeb was quite familiar with some of the tricks. Popular video creators on Amateur Station had pretty good incomes, and to get famous, the competition among them was very fierce. Besides competing on the quality of their works, their promotions, looks, and sob stories, some people would resort to underhanded tactics. For example, registering several new accounts specifically to badmouth their competitors or to tarnish the reputation of new rising stars who posed a threat to them. Most likely, his video had gone viral too fast, threatening some peers, and thus he was being targeted. Especially the accusations of plagiarism. Ridiculous. He was a music academy student and had been in the entertainment industry for several years, far more familiar with pop music than the average person. However, there were also people in the comments section speaking up for him. Plagiarism is a very serious accusation. If you have no evidence, please don't make baseless claims. This is my first time seeing someone criticized for making a song that's too good. Why can't someone post a good song on amateur station? Some people must be green-eyed monsters. Instead of wasting time here, why not write a good song yourself? One commenter named Mermaid Diva was particularly fierce in arguments, single-handedly taking on several haters without losing ground. Surprisingly, there were quite a few fans under her comments. Go, Diva! Diva's temper is still as fiery as ever. Diva, instead of arguing here, how about updating more? Don't be a procrastinator. Zeb remembered that this mermaid diva was quite famous in both the music and dance sections. She was very pretty, had a great figure, and was good at both singing and dancing. She often posted videos of herself singing and dancing, and because she was fair-skinned and well-endowed, she had a lot of fans. But she had a bit of a temper, often engaging in arguments, and was affectionately called Diva by her fans. He didn't expect this well-known beauty video creator to speak up for him, which was quite interesting. But there were still trolls who weren't afraid of Mermaid Diva, replying to her. You say Snowboat didn't plagiarize, then the proof is simple. Just release another original song of the same quality. But can he do it? The account that first started the plagiarism claims was named Keyboard Warrior, truly living up to the name. Mermaid Diva couldn't stand it and defended Zeb, but Keyboard Warrior came up with this classic line. If Snowboat can release another original song of the same quality, then it proves he didn't plagiarize. At this moment, in a villa in the capital, a tall, fair-skinned woman sat in front of her computer, her alluring, fair face flushed with anger, pounding her fists on the computer desk.